Hi there, and welcome to this week's Hack Your Classroom Hack Chat. My name's Claire Amos.
And I'm Steve Mouldy.
And today we thought we'd talk a little bit about the idea of how we know that we are hacking with purpose. So that idea that we're not just making change for change's sake, and that if we are innovating, it's about improving the outcomes for learners. So Steve, do you want to share some of your thoughts about why it's so important we get to know our learners?
Well, I've always kind of thought of innovation as creativity with a purpose, and I think if you're just doing changes for change's sake, then it's not really going to achieve much. So to get to know your learners helps you to work out, okay, if that's where they're at and we know what the vision and values of the school is or of your class or your department, then you can work out where do we need to go from here.
Absolutely, and I think one of the other really key things we need to think about when hacking your classroom is what we actually need to know about our learners. I think quite often we might find the ASTL data or the PAT data off our student management system, but also what we need to explore beyond that. So, what areas have you looked at in
some
the past?
of the things that I've quite liked finding out from previous teachers in the past is how confident they are at taking risks.
Yeah.
And whether they're the type of people that are happy to work on their own in groups, whether they're the ones that will come up and write on the board or those types of things, rather than just that kind of stock standard data.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that we look at different ways we can collect that data. I think we can often fall into the trap of, I found for years I did the whole letter to the teacher thing, and kids, would spend that first week, all they were doing is writing letters to teacher. And I think our modern day equivalent of that, whilst I still think it's really powerful, can be the Google form or the survey. And, I do use a Google form because it's a very quick, efficient way to gather information, but it's quite neat to sometimes explore some different strategies that we can use to find out more about our learners.
Because, my lens on things, at the moment, I'm always sort of focusing on that whole creativity, curiosity thing. I quite often will ask a lot of questions in the first couple of weeks around what are the big questions you've got of this topic.
Yes, yeah.
Or I'll set sort of little tasks that get them having to use things like pipe cleaners or Play-Doh and things like that, and I just spend the time actually watching the way that the students engage with that. Those that kind of sit back thinking, oh, can I just write this, as compared to those that are quite willing to take a chance.
And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of observation as a way of getting to know our learners. Actually, that sitting back and really watching our learners while they participate and actually remembering to collect that data and information about them.
Yeah, I last week went and did an empathy map for around some of the modules happening in our school, and it's actually the type of thing that you might not know this yet, but you're going to come into one of my modules this week and do the same for mine. So just sitting in the background and thinking, as a student in this class, what is it I see? What is it I hear? What do I feel in this environment, and what am I thinking about, just to help get that type of a picture as well. So as well as information for you, it's actually information about what's going on for the students in your class. Absolutely,
and sometimes we really do forget to put ourselves in the student's seat, quite literally, and I think we can often forget that we're one of, particularly in a secondary environment, we're one of a whole lot of other experiences they're having. We can become quite focused on our needs as a teacher in terms of, and what they need in our subject. Sometimes I think we forget to also get a real picture of what else they're studying at the same time, and having a real understanding of where the opportunities are, maybe for them to make connections between what we're doing in our teaching and learning context and how they could maybe connect it across. Like one of the readings that I shared this week was an ASCD one for knowing your learner, and I really liked that idea of having that conversation about getting to know your learner through listening to how they would contextualise the learning they've just done into another context, and how you can see where they're at in terms of their level of understanding and those sorts of things as well.
The Stanford 2025 project also has a big thing where they're talking about moving on from an academic transcript to a skill print, and it's about what are their strengths in terms of their competencies and that side of things, which I think fits really well for us with the New Zealand curriculum as compared to just their straight standard data again.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going beyond our learning area as well. It's not just thinking I'm an English teacher, I need to know their literacy. It's actually needing to know all of that stuff about our learners.
The way how confident they are at solving problems, at communicating their information. They're all things that go across all of our learning areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just to finish off, a couple of any other little quick ideas that you've got that you've done in the past for getting to know your learners?
Well, we've already seen a few people on Hack Your Class doing sort of co-constructing rubrics and things, so actually sort of working with the students on that. But you just can't underestimate, talking with your students, actually taking the time to build that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea. And again, we've seen it in Hack Your Classroom already, that idea of letting your students build the physical environment. And that actually reveals a whole lot about your students, particularly when you let them bring the culture into that process as well. And also having real fun around those sorts of ideas. Like, I love asking those questions like, this will reveal a lot about me. But, if you're a shop, what shop would you be? And those sort of like putting yourself in different contexts, or if you're an insect, what would you be? And one of the things that Lee, one of our colleagues, mentioned today was that idea of getting your kids to construct a bucket list and actually saying what are all the things that you would want to do, before you sort of, exited this place. But, so there's lots of really creative ideas.
Pete and I on Friday afternoon, because we're doing a module on food and place, we had them doing continuums of the types of foods that they like.
Yeah.
But then we also were going from homemade to takeaways in sort of those types of situations, which is something that's so transferable into any situation in terms of just finding out a bit of general information and just watching out for those students that always stay near the middle and don't want to move out to the sides.
Don't want to actually expose much about themselves. And I think just to finish up today, I think one of the things that's really interesting to explore is once we've gathered that information and we've actually learned a whole lot about our students, is actually keeping ourselves in check that we change our practice as a result. Like, I know historically I've been very guilty of getting the kids to write me a letter and priding myself on the fact that I know what Jenny does on the weekend and what Johnny likes to do. But actually, do I honestly change my practice as a result?
Does that actually come into the way that you're planning your module?
Yeah, and so that's something we really want to explore this week. And that's where that idea of hacking with purpose comes in. So we're not just talking about changing your practice for change's sake, and that when we're talking about innovation, we're doing it for a really clear reason.
I really like the whole Julia Atkin thing of kind of asking 5 whys.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. Why?
Yeah.
Well, because I really believe in this. Well, why do you believe in that? And sort of taking it deeper and deeper until you sort of are really certain, absolutely, that's the way we need to go.
Yeah. So there you go. So this week, hack your classroom, know your learner, and remember to always ask yourself why.